And so I got my start in all this at the Louisiana State Capitol. I think it's one of the most beautiful places ever. Although the pink building on Congress, she's also a beauty, and I love her too. But so I was working as a U.S. U.S. Senate press secretary for a candidate, and it was an amazing time. He was running for Strom Thurmond's seat. I was 23, and everyone was like, "How'd you get that job?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Just happy to be here, you know." And then we lost. It was 2002, and my boss lost. So I went from graduating from college in 3 years to getting a job before I graduated and working full time, to getting all these awards from the university, to having a #1 TV show. I worked at 3 TV stations and had a #1 show at all of them, to not having a job. What an odd place to be, if you've been labeled an overachiever all your life. To make that phone call and say, "Hey, Mom, Dad, I don't know what's going on. I don't have a plan." And so I turned to a mentor who ironically is in Austin today, and I'll get to see him. And he just lost his statewide race. He was one of 2 African Americans that ran in that election cycle. And they both were the first African American men to run statewide in the state of South Carolina. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And he just looked at me and he said, "Become a lobbyist." And so this is a part of my own story, my own movement that I'm just starting to share. I only knew one lobbyist, and that was Elle Woods in Legally Blonde 2, the movie, where she saved the dogs. Literally, that was the only one I knew. Had not been in the state capitol since 5th grade. And I said, okay, let's do it. That was November. Started looking for lobbying jobs in South Carolina and Louisiana. In February, someone handed me a badge and it said I was a lobbyist. Wow. And so I did what we do, how we bring balance to the table, and just how we women show up. I worked hard every day. Before I went to bed every night, I read 10 pages of the rules book, because I knew the other lobbyists who were males that were 30 and 40 years older than me had money from PACs. They could take their lawmakers to fancy dinners. And here I was, just a little nonprofit lobbyist with a smile and a manila folder full of fact sheets. Literally, that was it. That's all I got. And so I was the first one there, the last one to leave. I was in a place where I could just look down and see men walk, and I knew who it was because they only had a brown pair of shoes and a black pair of shoes, and I knew exactly who was wearing what shoes. And I was given the task of making all the restaurants in the state smoke-free. It was the year of Hurricane Katrina. Everyone was worried about the economic impact to New Orleans, its bars, and its culture, right? There's that mentality in 2005 that you had to smoke in a bar for it to be a bar and to listen to some good jazz. But I knew there was always a way, and I knew with faith and fortitude, those 2 things I learned from the women in my family, that we would figure it out because there's always a way. And so we fought, and it was a messy fight, from a lawmaker smoking a cigar on the Senate floor to prove a point, to the other lawmakers putting a whole bunch of amendments to water down the bill. So it was a really, really bad bill. And it was something that my organization did not want to support. And another organization that was a strong coalition member said, "We will not support, we're backing out." And so I said no. And we were an all-female lobby team, which is something so rare. We were less than 10 female lobbyists who were under the age of 40 at the time. And this particular lobby team, we were all still in our 20s. And I said, no way. I'm not getting off of this bill. It's my job to clean it up. It's my job to make it right. And so I convinced, again, it's one of those things I don't know how, but I convinced my organization to let me keep fighting and to just let me figure it out. And so it was a very long process. Senate floor, Senate, got to get the bad amendments off, House committee, House floor. And by the time we got back to that House floor, our whole coalition was back together, and the bill made it all the way through without any bad amendments. So we were an all-female team that made all the restaurants in Louisiana smoke-free. It was the last major piece of smoking legislation that went through, and they're still fighting to get all the bars out. We had a carve-out for the bars, and so they're introducing that legislation again this year. And you better believe I love making guest appearances there just to help, because I do want to see that through. And so it's just one of the ways that I know leaders turn moments into movements.